What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What's up, Fantasy Points? We are back for Outside the Box. Week 8, we're going to go through tournament plays, position by position, starting at quarterbacks. Apologies. I want to start out by saying apologize for the timing was off on YouTube. Apparently, we had many people in YouTube chat earlier at the scheduled start time from earlier in the day. It was not changed. So apologies for the miscommunication there. Hopefully, you guys still have an opportunity to watch the show with me and Scott, because I know it's going to be great because I'm here with the GOAT, Scott Barrett. Scott, I know you were kind of excited about the MMA slate today, but can you flip your brain from MMA to NFL? How did the MMA stuff go for you, etc.?
Yeah, I don't play MMA DFS. I just love it so much. I don't leave my apartment until like about January, so this is the one thing I have. And the card was in Abu Dhabi, so started earlier, conflicted, and I just really wanted to watch the main card, and it was awesome. It delivered. But yeah, now we're back. Now we're the best sport, NFL. Going to break down the NFL DFS slate. I have some hot takes. Excited to get into it. Hope you guys forgive us. Hope we didn't blow some goodwill with you guys. I don't see this happening again for the remainder of the year. And apologies again.
Scott, can we do a contest where you send somebody a Fantasy Points hat if they win it?
Win what? The UFC?
I want to do a contest. Yeah, I have an idea.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
All right. I am hosting a Halloween party tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Scott just asked me before the show, what am I going as for Halloween? If you can guess, first person to guess who I am going as for Halloween or what I am going as for Halloween will win a Fantasy Points hat. Does that sound good, Scott?
Yeah, I'll give them a hint too. It's on brand and lazy, and it's not the neighbor from the guy from Home Improvement.
Well, you just basically told them exactly who I'm going to be.
Right. Right. Whatever. Free hat for the first person who gets it.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to go position by position. Of course, anybody who has not watched the show, this is a tournament strategy show. So we're most of what we talk about here is going to be revolving around the large field tournaments. At the end of the show, we'll build a few. There you go. Susie already got it. Way to go, Susie. Paul Bunyan. Yes, Paul Bunyan. It was way too obvious. I happen to have a red and black flannel shirt that I'm going to throw on.
Someone guessed Ryan Fitzpatrick. I went as Ryan Fitzpatrick. The year, with the shades and then the zip one.
Big beards is kind of an easy one.
Yeah.
Matt says Al from. He already said not Al from Home Improvement though. That was part of that was like the two that were obvious. So it's that. Yeah, no, Paul Bunyan. Okay. Oh, Steven says he got it first. Oh, he did. Oh, that's my bad. Steven did get it first.
Okay. All right. Hit me up on Twitter. I'll hook you up with a hat.
Okay. So we got that out of the way. We're going to be going position by position. Tournament strategy show. Scott brings all the NFL data knowledge. Scott digs deeper than anybody I know into NFL data. I am a longtime DFS player. I play every sport, but I've gotten super into NFL DFS. So I bring kind of more of the game theory aspect of it. And we kind of throw ideas, bounce ideas off each other, mostly me bouncing ideas off of Scott. I test my Galaxy Brain ideas off of Scott. He, of course, will share some of his as well. And because we're keeping it short, Scott, I think, we've been doing this thing where I ask you, you make me throw names at you and then you tell me yes or no. But I'm hoping that because we're trying to keep it a little bit shorter, we're starting a little bit later, maybe you'll just share some more of your
I was hoping the opposite, where I could just, if you don't mention my guy, I guess we just won't get to him.
Oh man,
put more pressure on you. No, we'll see. I'll be a team player.
All right. We're gonna start at quarterback, and we go position by position. We like to start with just talking about the chalk. Like, do we want to poke holes in it, or do you just want to eat the chalk? No super chalk at quarterback. I think the only quarterback that I would call sort of chalky is Bo Nix, projected for 15% ownership against the Panthers. We'll start there. So he's, he runs a bit, has a great matchup. 15% ownership doesn't seem crazy high to me. What do you think about Bo Nix, Scott?
Yeah, fourth highest implied point total of the slate. It's 26% higher than their season-long average by points scored per game. Like you said, underrated rushing floor. Do we trust Bo Nix as bad as he's been as chalk in a game where without Deontay Johnson, without Andy Dalton, do we think Carolina is really going to push them? I can't get on board with that personally. This is outside the box, trying to be a little more contrarian. So yeah, I think I would full fade Bo Nix and feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, he's the obvious cash game quarterback, but I have no issue with wanting to fade him in large field tournaments because he is going to be the highest owned of all the quarterbacks. So I mean, I think that's the only one we have to like poke holes in from a chalk perspective. I think everybody else is, they're all 8% or lower, so nobody else we can really call chalk at the quarterback position. So let's just talk about some of our favorites. And I'll throw out, I guess I will work down a little bit. Jordan Love at 8% seems pretty good to me against the Jaguars. What do you think about it, Scott?
Yeah, I really like Jordan Love. He won the Millie a few weeks ago naked, and I could kind of see him doing that again in this spot.
Yeah.
He ranks third among all quarterbacks in DraftKings fantasy points per game with 22.8. And this isn't just like a 2024 thing. Over his last 13 games, he's right there, 22.5. It's a literal best possible matchup against the league's worst secondary. I think the only tricky thing is figuring out who to stack him with. But I mean, yeah, on paper, that certainly feels about right. Trevor Lawrence, I would disagree with. Just does he offer slate breaking upside? He's just been like a massive fantasy disappointment for I don't know how many years now. I don't know why you wouldn't just play Jordan Love, but that's me.
$1,500 difference in salary, I guess, would be the one thing that Trevor has going over Jordan Love. But yeah, clearly Love looks better, has the massive ceiling. What about Caleb Williams? I mean, we've been doing the wide receivers against Washington, quarterbacks against Washington pretty frequently all year. They haven't been quite as bad as I thought they would be from like a schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed perspective. They're actually not that horrible. But I think we can still attack them through the passing game. Do you like the Bears passing game this week?
Yeah, by EPA per drop back or EPA per drive, they're still pretty bad, but you're right. And you look at Caleb Williams, he's been insanely schedule sensitive this year. 3 games over 23 DraftKings fantasy points. All 3 came against defenses that rank bottom 8 in schedule adjusted. Washington's what? Bottom 4?
In terms of schedule adjusted? No, they're up here like 10th worst. That quarterback.
What? Okay. All right. Yeah. But anyway, to me, it's still, you look at, advanced passing, maybe you can see adjusted net yards per attempt allowed or some other stuff. They've gotten more man heavy. They've kind of figured a few things out. But again, it's still, to me, a favorable matchup, maybe without Jaden Daniels. Maybe he doesn't get pushed as much, but yeah, I like it. I think it's a spot where he could do well. And he's done well. So yeah, I like it.
Yep. We got the question, love triples. To me, that's a little bit too much in a large field contest. Like it's difficult to see 3 wide receiver pass catching options get there with Jordan Love on this slate because it's such a large slate. Like you're going to need big scores and there's a lot of good value. So to me, it'd be a little bit tough to get 2 Love triples, but what do you think about it, Scott?
Yeah, probably not for me.
Yeah, just if you do, then you definitely want a Jacksonville bring back if you do love triples. But yeah, probably not the way I would approach it. Tua is back, so like Tyreek Hill looks awesome point per dollar. Devin Achane looks awesome point per dollar. What about Tua himself at 6,100? Any interest there?
Yeah, and that's the core argument is just the mispricing of Achane, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle could go down in history as, one of the most egregious mistakes DraftKings has ever made. And so obviously you have to like Tua. It makes that an easy stack with tons of upside, because that's how you got to view the stack. It's the receivers with the quarterback and just insane value, insane upside. So yeah, obviously he's a great play. He's one of the better GPP plays of the slate, I think.
Would you double stack him, single stack him? How do you think you'd play
Yeah, I think you could double. I think you could triple. Just because all those guys are just such strong values.
Yeah, that is true. I think this is probably the better triple if you include Achane or even like, I don't know, we'll talk about Jonnu Smith maybe as an option. Lamar Jackson is one that I did not really get to. I think he's just the stack is too expensive. Like even though he's I think he's the best projected quarterback on the slate, but because he's so expensive, and his stacking partners are like bad point per dollar plays. I don't think I'm going to get there. Am I crazy? What do you think about Lamar?
Yeah, I was saying a few weeks ago is like I might seriously consider making a rule that's something like Lamar or Derrick Henry on every single lineup, with maybe a
Oh,
few
damn.
lineups that have both. But I was saying this a few weeks ago.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, Jackson is just on pace for one of the 10 best fantasy seasons of all time by any quarterback. He's just playing at such a high, like he won MVP last year and he looks so much better. And so, yeah, he's expensive, but I think he does make up for that with upside, slate breaking potential. Not my favorite quarterback of the week, but he's up there for me.
Steven says, I know you never think about an injury factor, but with Tua, how do you not? I mean, to me, this is like he's not going to re-aggravate it unless obviously it gets hit in the head. Like it's not like a hamstring where it's like could just like randomly re-aggravate it anytime throughout the game. So, I mean, yeah, it's definitely a concern. Like just a hit in the head and Tua's out of the game, like almost certainly.
I mean, I think you could think about that for cash, where it's like, Jameis has a benching risk that Bo Nix does not. But for tournaments, no, I don't ever think about that unless it's like a guy comes into a game with like a hamstring and I don't know, it's a tiebreaker even then. So.
You just brought up my favorite quarterback on the slate. I think factoring in ownership, Jameis Winston projected for just 4% ownership against the Ravens, who have given up the most passing yards in the entire NFL this year. Coming in at just 4% ownership at 5,200. To me, Jameis is like he's a fantasy goldmine just because he'll sling it. Could breathe life into an offense that has been terrible, but I think it was largely Deshaun Watson's fault. So I think maybe this offense will be better. And all of his pass catchers are pretty cheap. Amari Cooper's gone, so they're all like still priced at the role they had with Amari Cooper there. I don't know. There's just I love Brown stacks this week. You think that there's legitimate benching risk for Jameis Winston?
I just mean relative to Bo Nix if you're talking about cash. But no, I think Jameis is far and away the best quarterback play of the slate. I think if you doubled his ownership, that would still be the case for me. I'm going to consider going all in on him. I wrote him up as my cash quarterback of the week, which is maybe a little too spicy, but I just think he's straight up a much better play than Bo Nix, even factoring in some benching risk. But I've been waiting all season for this. I've been waiting 2 months for this. Every single week in the Everything Report, I was saying there's no way the Browns can just keep starting Deshaun Watson every single week. He's just too bad. There's just no way. And like once we get Jameis, then fireworks, massive upside, massive potential. And the Browns were content to just continue trotting out Deshaun Watson. Perhaps maybe they were even rooting for an injury because that contract is injury protected for them. So whatever the reason, we finally got it. We got Jameis Winston. Not only that, but we also got a play caller upgrade in Ken Dorsey, who is famously, the top play caller by pass rate over expectation. And not only that, but the Bills were the team to never take their foot off the gas, where they're up multiple scores in the third, fourth quarter, and they're still leaning extremely pass heavy. Jameis is of that archetype as well. We all remember the famous 30-30 season in 2019. It was the 10th most passing yards all time. And Deshaun Watson, even the first 4 weeks of the season, led all quarterbacks and dropbacks per game. The volume was awesome. What was going wrong? He was so bad. Over 50% of his air yards were deemed uncatchable by fantasy points data charting. What happened last year with my competent quarterback play, Joe Flacco? From week 14 on, Joe Flacco was the QB2 by fantasy points per game. Amari Cooper was the wide receiver 1. David Njoku was the tight end 1. Not only that, but also the wide receiver 3 by fantasy points per game. It's a top 2 matchup by schedule adjusted. Ravens are down CB1, Marlon Humphrey. Their other starting cornerback, Nate Wiggins, is questionable. Starting D tackle is questionable. 3 other backup cornerbacks are questionable or out. Just add it all up and there's risk here. Like there's, it could be he just throws a pick on his first 2 drives and, he's benched. That could happen. But to me, it's still, reward vastly outweighs the risk and really, really one of my favorite ways to attack this slate this week.
EW says, isn't Winston going to be much higher owned than that projection? It's possible, but around the industry, I just did a quick look, and he's 7% owned some places. Like, it's pretty low ownership, and the projection is just not really high on Jameis Winston. They also have one of the worst implied team totals on the slate, so it is sort of a galaxy brain play. Of course, I've talked about it on every piece of content I've done this week, and I don't think we're the only ones who are on Jameis Winston. But it's a very clear GPP play where people who are not consuming a lot of content probably not playing a ton of Jameis Winston. But I don't think it's going to be super highly owned. It's certainly possible he could be, but no, I'm not expecting it. All right, who else? Let's just open it up. Who else do you like, Scott?
Yeah, we can breeze sort of through this part. I gave you the best plays. These are more galaxy brain plays, but it's like, hey, Kirk Cousins in this matchup 3 weeks ago threw for 509 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like, realistically, how many quarterbacks have that sort of upside this week? And he's just 2%, so no one really wants to play him. The opposite quarterback as well, even like Baker Mayfield probably struggles without his 2 wide receivers, but he's been the QB2 by fantasy points per game. Price is the QB9. And what if he gets there with these super cheap receivers? So that's another way to play it. Aaron Rodgers is interesting to me. He gets Devontae Adams. What's really held him back is just this league worst offensive line. But he's up against a bottom 3 pass rush. I could see him making this a statement game. He's notoriously a touchdown hog. And so you look at the implied point total, the Vegas spread, there's a chance that Rodgers doubles, crushes Breece Hall chalk as leverage. Mariota's a little interesting. If you look at what he did last week with the rushing, and Washington really kept their foot on the gas. Last time he was a starter, he ranked top 6 in fantasy points per dropback. It's not a great matchup, but just someone I felt deserved a shout. Anthony Richardson is on that spectrum. He's not good at football. It's clear as day, but in 7 full games, he's cleared 27 fantasy points twice. So the upside is there. But again, these were the thinner plays, the Millie plays. And we spent more time on the better ones.
Yep. I think that probably does it. I think we've talked about the plays that I like. CJ Stroud is sort of interesting because of the matchup. He's just sort of in the Mahomes realm where he just never really puts up huge fantasy scores. But I think he's marginally playable. He's another one. What about Joe Burrow? I guess Joe Burrow is the one. Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts I have some interest in. Just that game I think has a possibility of going off. Do you have any interest in either of those?
Yeah, I think a lot might hinge on the updates we're going to get on T. Higgins. Sure. Just because that offense really looked non-viable the first 2 weeks without him. It was crazy how much of an impact he had. And then you've seen him just really lead the team in targets, lead all players in first read target share since he's been healthy. Clear, really important piece to that offense, where if he's out, maybe the move is Saquon. If he plays, you could look at Jalen Hurts, you could look at AJ Brown, you could look at Chase, you could theoretically play Higgins if we get word he's totally fine. But I've just kind of been waiting for more updates before giving a firmer stance on that.
Daya says T-Law stack with BTJ and Bigsby if ETN is out. Bigsby's not really involved in the passing game though, so he's a little bit tough of a stack with T-Law for me. I think I'd like him better individually. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm also just a known T-Law hater, so
it's true.
There.
EW wants,
and it's never burned me. So.
Yeah, true. It's never actually hurt you. May stack to me, it's just a bad matchup for Drake May, so I don't really think I get there. Same.
Yeah, I'm going to be excited to play him one of these weeks. I think there's better options this week.
Yeah. All right, we can move on and talk about running backs. The chalk is Breece Hall, 33% projected ownership for Breece Hall. Just a pricing thing. He's only 7,300. Has an awesome role. What do you think about 33% going to Breece Hall?
Yeah, so to me, he was far and away the best value this slate. I will just say our projections are Chris Wecht, who is a literal genius, and he's been doing an amazing job with projections. Super accurate across, compared to anyone across the industry. He's worried a little bit about this game being a massive blowout. I know Jake has talked about Rodgers being a touchdown hog. So that's your excuse to get away from him for tournaments. But this is really one of those things where him and Javonte, like, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm just like, okay, these are the two running backs who should be far and away the highest owned of the slate. And that's what they're saying. And I think that's deserved.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. It's a little bit high for me. I imagine I come in under 33%, but yeah, hard to really poke too many holes in it. It is a great spot. J.K. Dobbins, 20%, also pretty chalky.
Yeah, our projections really love him. I kind of don't as much, just because of like the archetype and who he is, especially now with Kamani Vidal stealing routes. He's sort of that Jordan Mason archetype where he really needs like 100+ yards and a touchdown. And like, what if he gets 90 yards and he doesn't get a touchdown? Then he kills you, right? And so that's just the way I kind of view the play. But on paper, obviously it looks amazing. This defense is just getting absolutely destroyed against the run. Kareem Hunt, Sean Tucker, Bucky Irving, Javonte Williams, all combined for about like 35 fantasy points per game against them. Chargers, we know, are just so stubbornly run heavy. It's a great spot to do that. Game script should be amazing, all that stuff. So yeah, and again, the projections really high on him this week for us.
Yeah. Pepper Tony brings up Bijan. It is pretty interesting seeing Bijan is he's $100 cheaper than Breece Hall and getting 12% ownership to Breece Hall's 33%. Any interest in Bijan?
Yeah, I think he's solid. Jake and I sort of went back and forth on this, where we there was this frustrating committee with Tyler Algier, and I don't know if you listen to like redraft podcasts, but they sounded so schizophrenic, where it's like, it's over for Bijan. He's not who you drafted him to be. Sell him for a low end RB1 if you could do it. And then last week it's like, oh, he's back. He's an Uber bell cow. He's the man. And so Jake thinks that's due to a game script where he does better in negative game script. Johnny and I have been saying for a few weeks, we think, he was dealing with an injury and maybe now he's healthy. But if Jake is right, this would not be a good game script matchup for him, really. Just because Buccaneers, lost two big pieces. I can see them losing. To me, I mean, Breece is just the much better play on paper, but you want to talk about ownership, I certainly get it. I will say Bijan probably not super high on my list. There's some other running backs within that pricing range who excite me more.
Okay. Is Jonathan Taylor one of them? He was just brought up. Any interest in JT?
So I didn't write him up, but I certainly think he's far more interesting than the 1% projected ownership you'll see. It's a brutal matchup, but he averages like, 19 fantasy points per game in healthy games with Anthony Richardson. And I think Richardson does better with a healthy JT as well. But just in this spot, I think there's better avenues to go, but I certainly gave it some thought. Yeah.
Tough one for me in that matchup. Joe Mixon, we've had some success playing Joe Mixon this year. He's playing against.
So why stop, Neil?
Yeah, he's expensive. He's getting more and more expensive every week, but the matchup is.
Is he priced in line with his volume or production to date?
Probably not.
Right.
No.
Right.
So you want to go back to it?
I like him. He scored at least 26 fantasy points in 3 full games. Insane volume, best in the league. Market share over the backfield. Texans are 5-point favorites. Colts are the league's biggest run funnel. Top 7 matchup on paper. And this is what we kept talking about, is like Bobby Slowick, way more stubbornly run heavy than we want. And he was doing that with scrubs at running back. And then you bring in a Joe Mixon so the volume is there, but it's not just that. Mixon looks damn good. He's a really strong play, but there's a few running backs in this pricing range that I really like.
I'm assuming one of them is Kenneth Walker against the Bills run funnel defense.
You're damn right, Neil. You're damn right.
I know you.
It's weird. He's projected, like, our projections don't really love him, and like that's true. We might even be higher than anyone else across the industry. And I don't get it. I think he should be higher. I think he should be much higher. It's just, he's been balling the F out. Arguably the best usage of any running back in football. Only Kamara and Breece have more targets per game. we know when Seattle has a lead, they're just going to give it to Kenneth Walker, and he's going to do well with it. Here's an insane stat. He leads all players in fantasy points per carry, which is like so insane when you look at what Saquon's doing, Derrick Henry's doing. And it's a great matchup. It's an underrated matchup, but Buffalo ranks second worst in schedule adjusted allowed. 97% of that is going through the air, but on the ground, Buffalo ranks dead last in yards before contact per attempt, bottom 7 in yards per carry allowed. I could see him getting more work with DK Metcalf out. Game script's the concern, but I don't really know how much that matters when he's getting this sort of passing volume. He had like a brutal flu game last week, like where the coaches have said it was really bad, and still the usage was there, still the production was there, the efficiency was there. So yeah, he's enticing to me. The other guy in this pricing range, who we touched on briefly, drawing low ownership, is Saquon. Again, I think not super high on my list, but at 3%, that's tempting. He's just been awesome. The role has been awesome. T. Higgins out, if he's out, I think helps him. And who knows? Maybe he doesn't get tackled at the 1 and Hurts, gets all the vultures. Maybe he gets the touchdowns this week. The crazy thing about him too, if you look at it, is he's averaging like 1.8 40 plus yard runs per game, something insane like that. Yeah. And so he just has, which by the way, Brees is not doing this year. That's who Brees was last year. He's not doing that this year, but that just like massive slate breaking potential if he hits 2 of those. So.
And a great matchup with Cincinnati.
Right.
It feels unsustainable to me, but also sustainable this week. Feels like a good enough matchup where it could just continue here. Speaking of players who fall down at the 1 and then we see Jalen Hurts bring it in. DeAndre Swift, pretty nice matchup here with Washington. He's only 6,200, getting 18% ownership. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think he's an awesome play. He's hit 20 DraftKings fantasy points in each of his last 3 games. By volume, by XFP per game, it's top 2. Much more highly involved in the red zone. Bears, really fast pace of play, really good play volume. Washington, their defense is not good, or at least by EPA per play, they're bottom 10. Game script should be good, especially if Jaden Daniels sits out. So he's up there. He's not my favorite GPP running back this week, but he's up there.
All right, well, we'll get to it. James Conner against Miami, kind of a run funnel defense. Also, he's 6,500. How do you feel about James Conner?
Yeah, I did the Cashing Points podcast last night, and Hilo and I debated him a little bit. Maybe I'm overreacting to like a 1-game sample size, but his usage exploded last week. He had a season high 86% snap share. He had a nearly 70% route share. I don't think he cleared 45% at any other point in the season. So like if that holds, there's a pathway where the Miami chalk can hit and he could hit as well. But like, even you just throw that out, he's a phenomenal leverage play off of the Miami chalk. So I like him for tournaments. I think he's a pretty good option for sure.
Yep, I do too. Man, Chase asking me for an RB2 hero play, and I don't know that I have one off top of my head, so I'll have to think about that while we're going through this. But I think I should just open it up to you, Scott, at this point, because you said we have not gotten to your favorite running back play of the slate, so I would love to hear who that is and who else you might like on this slate.
Yeah, it's obviously Derrick Henry. What are we doing here?
All right.
The guy is out of his freaking mind. He looks amazing. And I talked about this all offseason. It's like, you have no idea how massive this upgrade is, where it's like the most game script sensitive player in fantasy football history is now going to, the Ravens are favored to win all of their remaining games. And then the offensive line upgrade is massive. Baltimore not only leads the league in yards before contact per attempt, but it's like 3x what it was in any of Henry's last 5 seasons with the Titans, which is just such a massive advantage to one of the greatest pure runners in NFL history. Everything just lines up for an absolute smash spot. You could stack them up with Ravens defense, and maybe it's you get the Jameis Winston multiple pick game, which seems fairly likely knowing his history. Amazing play, worth paying up for. And like I said, I'm gonna have a ton of Jameis, so I'm gonna have a ton of Derrick Henry. Probably gonna have some Zay Flowers as well if he suits up, or Bateman if he doesn't.
Yeah, seems good at 6% ownership. The price is high, but also not like that much higher than a lot of other running backs who are getting more ownership. So makes a lot of sense. Tony Pollard's sort of a tough one with Tyjae Spears now out, but facing Detroit, who's been a pretty good run defense. What do you think of Tony Pollard this week?
Yeah. I don't like the matchup, but the volume will be there. Dude, 11-point dogs are tough to play. They're really tough
at
to
running
play.
back. Yeah.
We didn't mention Kareem Hunt. Like, I think Kareem Hunt's probably a better play than Pollard.
Getting some ownership, but probably warranted. 63 carries in 3 games with the Chiefs. Man, I did not have this in my range of outcomes. I drafted like Samaje Perine. I drafted who am I thinking of? The CEH. All of the other Chiefs backup like RB2s, and they just are all completely worthless because they just signed Kareem Hunt, and he's awesome, doing what we were hoping from those other guys. He looks great. Anybody else? Any other names that are important to you this week?
There's a few guys in the slate breakdown. I think I might be slipping on, but no one who is going to be a core staple of my week 8.
Okay. Devin Achane, we talked about it a little bit earlier.
I'm sorry. He is a core staple. You know me, like I'm a little biased. I'm such a Devon Achane homer stan, whatever, but it's just insane usage and volume, especially with Tua Tagovailoa back. It's a really favorable matchup. I just have so much conviction in the player. He's not priced anywhere near his median, I think, but more importantly, his upside as the lead back in a Mike McDaniel offense who just had the most efficient rookie season ever. And so, I just definitely one of my favorite plays of the slate.
I'm trying to think of who would be my hero RB2. I think it would probably just be like Jaleel McLaughlin if I was going to go somewhere, just from the standpoint of, he has some standalone value, obviously. Incredible.
Oh, dude, it's obviously Braylon Allen. What is wrong with you?
Braylon, same kind of story where it's like, he's
fourth quarter. I guess
value.
It is the same. I guess it is. He's like barely been involved with the new OC. So all right, maybe it is Jaleel. My bad. Sorry for stepping on your toes.
Yeah, come on now. I'm the RB2 guy here, Scott.
That's right.
No, you nailed one either earlier this year or last year. There was somebody, I forget who it was. But if I were going to one, and he's not, I didn't even write him up in my write up of the full slate. But I think if I were going to go to an RB2, just like, he has some standalone value. Maybe he takes on more of that role. Maybe they just run all over the Panthers. So the matchup is so good, the contingent value is so good that I think it would probably be Jaleel McLaughlin. Then obviously the leverage on everybody playing Javonte. So if you want a hero RB2, to me, it would be Jaleel McLaughlin. Any other, let me just peruse these names real quick, see if there was anybody else that I really wanted to hear your thoughts on. I think we probably talked about everybody that I have any serious interest. Rachaad White. He was looking so good briefly when we thought Bucky Irving was going to be out, but he's still like without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Do you think there's any possibility that Rachaad White just like has a much bigger role because he is the kind of passing game running back?
Yeah, absolutely. And he's good at that role, and he's multiple games with 70 plus receiving yards. He had 2 receiving touchdowns last week. He's just really good at that. And, they need someone to throw the ball to. Not super high on my list, but I could see that happening.
Matt Love says Mostert. I did think about Mostert as that RB2 play. I think you could consider it. Mm-hmm. He hasn't really had much of a role like this year. It hasn't been nearly as good.
Leverage on Tyreek. So
leverage on Tyreek, leverage on Achane.
Yeah.
Okay. Enough about running backs. We will move on. Talk about some wide receivers. Tyreek Hill is the chalk, but still just 26% ownership. He's only $7,000. You think it's gonna be higher?
Yeah, I'd say 34%.
If he comes in at 34%, how do you feel about that?
I feel like I deserve a prize for getting it right.
Yeah, that's right. I agree. Yeah. You can give yourself a fantasy points hat.
Hey, awesome.
Where's your prize?
Yeah. So the only ring, like when you look at this, it's just like, yeah, okay, maybe I just go all in here. because this is just last year, week 11, he was 9,800 and he was the chalkiest wide receiver of the slate. Might not have been week 11, somewhere around there. 9,800, chalkiest wide receiver. Now he's 7K. You look at what he's done with Tua, 22.2 fantasy points per game. He's hit 30%. He's hit 30 DK in 36% of those games. Just like a massive median, massive slate breaking potential. And so I'm going to wait for Johnny to tell me what to do, because he's such a pro when it comes to this. But I think I already know what he's going to say tomorrow morning, which is just like, bro, what are you worried about 33% ownership? He should be 80%. I'm going to go all in. And I think that's what he's going to do. And I think that's what I'm going to do. The hang up here is he was DNP on Friday with a foot injury.
Right.
He's listed as questionable. And so like, we haven't gotten any update on that. A few days ago, Tyreek did tell us to start him. He said, strike up the effing band.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
But that was before this foot injury. So I don't know what's going on here. Really excited to hear what Dr. Johnny says tomorrow morning, but I don't know. It's an interesting wrinkle. But I will say initial, throw out the foot injury. He strikes me as someone who should be like 50%. So.
Yeah. He does seem like it's rare that you get a player that low owned that feels like it's a little bit light, but that does feel a little bit light on Tyreek Hill. Jalen McMillan at 22%, obviously stepping up with Godwin and Evans out. He's 3,700. What do you think about that ownership on Jalen McMillan?
Yeah, I could argue this a few different ways. A lot of fantasy experts have been saying like, he's not going to just step into that Godwin role. That's silly.
The coaches have said that.
What?
The coaches have said that. They've said that we're not going to fill the role. Like not one player is going to be able to fill the role.
They're going to go more run heavy. Cade Otton's going to stick to this role that he's seen with like the banged up wide receivers where he's heavily involved. He's getting design targets and all that. I know that's what the coaches have said, but what they've said privately, some ESPN reporter talked about this in her article that like Liam Cohen told McMillan privately, like, this is your week. We need you to step up. Yeah. This is why we drafted you. And like, I do this thing every offseason where I watch literally every post-draft press conference, and it takes me like 70 hours. And one of the things they said was, Jalen McMillan, he's going to be the Chris Godwin understudy. If Chris Godwin gets hurt, he could slide right in. And then, we know Chris Godwin's out after this year, so he would probably get that starting slot role. But then he really wowed in the offseason and became a starting outside wide receiver. And I think there's a chance he gets that. And like, I know I'm kind of confusing everyone here, but just at 3,700, throw out ownership, like that's really tempting to me. That upside, he's really struggled. He has not looked good on tape, but you could argue that's because he's playing out of position and he belongs in the slot, which is where he played in college and why he fell in the draft. Many teams viewed him as slot only. But I think the upside's enticing to me at this price. There's not really a ton of risk, but you factor in ownership. I don't know. I'll leave that to you, Neil, based on what I just said. What you think the optimal approach is?
With Jalen McMillan, it's tough. Like I would imagine I'd probably be a little bit light on 22%, but not like super light on it because I do think he's a strong play. We just have so many. I mean, on his own team, Trey Palmer, pretty interesting. Sterling Shepard, sort of interesting.
Right.
And then
Tim Patrick,
Cedric Tillman, Jake Bobo,
yep.
Potentially Yoshi if T. Higgins is out. Just we have so many.
Exactly.
So you kind of have to play the ownership game to some extent.
And I think you're right.
Yeah, it's a little bit tough, but like he might just light things up. The thing is, if he does light things up and 22% of the field is playing it, and you're playing in a contest with 200,000 entrants in it, like you're still playing a large field GPP just against the players that have Jalen McMillan. You're not really cutting out that much ownership. So I don't know, or you're not. I mean, you're cutting out 80% of the field, but like there's still a ton of people that will have him. So I don't know. You obviously want him if he goes off, but
yeah. And again, just the allure of that Cooper Kupp slot role is like Godwin was doing really well, and like Jalen McMillan's not as talented, but it's also that role where Godwin was averaging like 9 fantasy points per game just on design targets where like anyone can step in and do that. And so, yeah, I like 50% more than the next closest player, who is Zay Flowers, who also has like one of those awesome cheat code rolls. But yeah, I think you made a great point. There's a lot of these cheap guys. I forgot to turn my AC back on, so I am sweating my dick off. So
all right, you go turn your AC on. I'm going to respond to Jack Off, who says, waiting to hear if Trey Palmer wakes up pissed off on Twitter tomorrow. That is a good policy. Also, you got to wake up, check to see if Trey Palmer has said on Twitter that he's pissed off. I woke up pissed off this morning. If Trey Palmer woke up pissed off, then you obviously play him over Jalen McMillan. You didn't hear any of that. I was just saying I'm on the same page as Jack Off, who says, waiting to hear if Trey Palmer wakes up pissed off on Twitter tomorrow, because he has a long history. Anytime he posts on Twitter, I woke up pissed off this morning, he scores a touchdown. So then you would play Trey Palmer over Jalen McMillan. You know that narrative, right, Scott?
Yeah. Why? I don't know why he doesn't just tweet that every week until
he should every week that he's playing. Yeah. I mean, it works every week.
Maybe I'll tweet that tomorrow morning and win a minute.
Mr. TD says I'm talking about Jack Off. Okay. Moving on to the, I love the name and I say it how it's supposed to be said. Okay. So T Higgins is obviously a lot in flux. Let's just talk about the Bengals situation in general. T Higgins in versus T Higgins out. T Higgins 6,500 projected for 20% ownership. Just an awesome point per dollar play if he's in. If he's out, where do we go? Do we go to just like all the Jamar Chase? Do we play Yoshi? What are you doing with the Bengals receiver?
Yeah, I'm going to leave that I'm going to outsource that to John Proctor tomorrow morning. But it's tricky because, without Higgins those first 2 weeks, and maybe that's just a small sample, but it was really rough for Cincinnati. And, Chase didn't do anything. Yoshi didn't really do anything, although volume is really good for him. Bunch of end zone targets randomly. And then Chase hasn't had the volume this year. It's so bizarre. But if you look at the broader sample, prior to this year, any game T Higgins was out or limited, Chase was averaging 16 targets and 28 fantasy points per game. So I just say high range of outcomes there. This does appear to be an underrated spot and not a lot of people are flocking to, but personally, I'm still kind of conflicted with it and sorting it out.
He's also really expensive. So even without T Higgins, and he
right.
Several of his games were without T Higgins, and I think he's only had one or two, maybe he's had a few blowout games. He's had a decent season, but yeah, it's been weird seeing how T Higgins has had more usage than Jamar Chase when they're both active. But yeah, I don't know. It's sort of a tough spot. But one to monitor at least with T Higgins questionable. What about Jalen Waddle? So we've talked about all the other Miami guys. Waddle is only 5,400. How do you feel about it? 19% protected ownership.
I mean, I just much rather play Tyreek, but there's enough value here where really they both can go off or both crush value at their price tag. In career games with Tua, he's basically a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. He's priced as the wide receiver 35 this week. And so yeah, I could see it. I just my stance is going to be Tyreek. It doesn't look like a great spot for him. He was also dealing with an injury earlier in the week as well.
True.
But, also Devon Achane playing wide receiver more, I think kind of hurts him, or at least it did the first few weeks of the season.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, has he had any weeks that you wanted yet this year? I can't think of a single week where I was like, man,
I mean, neither has Tyreek, to be fair.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Drake London, 7,200 against Tampa Bay has been pretty awesome in terms of usage, 15% projected ownership. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think he's an awesome play. I think he's a cash wide receiver play this week. He's hit at least 17.4 DK in 5 of his last 6 games. In the same spot, he scored 36.4. Maybe you could say he doesn't have bury you upside because that was his only real spike week, and it came in a game that Cousins threw for 500 plus yards. But and it's not a good schematic matchup at all. We did see Mooney outscore him, saw more targets in that same spot. But you'd also argue he's just looks like a high end wide receiver 1 for fantasy, and he's still not priced like it. So all that's compelling arguments to me. Maybe Tampa Bay doesn't push Atlanta here without their star wide receivers, but like I said, I wrote him up as a cash play, so I really like the value. There's just maybe a few holes you could poke for tournaments, but 15% is not really a lot either.
Sure. What about Cleveland? So we talked about liking Jameis, Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. Where are we going to on Cleveland as far as pass catchers?
Well, we're not going to Elijah Moore. We learned that lesson like 4 years ago. We're not doing that. Cedric Tillman. So I think was the product of the backup connection, which is like a narrative I coined, 8 years ago, where you see a starting quarterback go down and the backup quarterback goes in. And there's also a backup wide receiver now starting. That quarterback just locks into that dude because they have so much chemistry and rapport from practice time. And you really saw that. You saw that with DTR just lock in on Cedric Tillman. And then Jameis Winston came in, targeted Jeudy on a team high 33% of his targets. That said, at this price, just the fact that he had 11 first read targets last week, still a really strong play. But I do think Judy's flying under the radar. I really like Jeudy. It's a great matchup. Ravens just getting absolutely shredded by wide receivers. Maybe a little bit better spot for Jeudy. And then Njoku, we'll talk about Njoku, who I like a lot as well. But yeah, again, that's part of the reason why I like Jameis so much, is just there's value here with these wide receivers and tight ends.
If you wanted to play a Baltimore pass catcher, would it be Rashad Bateman? Who do you think you'd go to from Baltimore, if anybody?
Zay Flowers, if he's active, just looks like a great tournament play. He's hit 22 DraftKings fantasy points in 3 of 7 games or 3 of 6 healthy games, 9+ targets in 4 of 7 or 4 of 6 healthy games. Did absolutely nothing those other games. Yeah, so you just see the ceilings there, and obviously really bullish on Baltimore's offense this week, every week. But if he's out, or if we get word he's seriously banged up like he was last week, maybe it's Bateman, the ascot, right? And so maybe he finally gets some real target volume without Flowers. I think it's a good matchup for both wide receivers. It's a great schematic for Zay, not so much Bateman, but Cleveland's especially vulnerable deep, which is better for Bateman. And he's quietly had 17.3 fantasy points per game over his last 3. So like I said, if I like Jameis, I also like all these stacking partners on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. Lad McConkey, 5,100, 7 targets each of the past 3 games. How do you feel about McConkey?
Yeah, I didn't even write him up. I don't know. I don't think the Saints push them. He hasn't done anything this year. His ceiling feels like 7 targets on the most run heavy offense since 1947. So I don't know. I didn't write him up, but yeah, he projects well for us and across the industry. So there's probably something there. It's just at 16%, I'd rather go somewhere else.
Muhammad says Amon-Ra St. Brown looks good. Sort of a tough matchup for me with Tennessee. Do you have any interest there? No Jameis.
Tennessee is a little bit weaker in the slot. They're also down CB1 L'Jarius Sneed, which I think is big.
Oh, they are. Okay.
The big argument here, I think, is that without Jameson, maybe his usage goes back to what it was last year. Where he was such a freak. He 22 point something fantasy points per game, and he hit 17 and 14 of 16. I don't know. I just don't really see Tennessee pushing them, but highest implied point total is Slate by a wide margin. Goff has as many touchdowns as incompletions over the last 3 weeks. So yeah, upside's there. Not super high on my list, but I get it.
Did not realize that L'Jarius Sneed is out. That is kind of interesting.
He might be questionable. I think out. Let me see if I have it in my notes. Yeah, he's out.
So we talked about Jalen McMillan. Do you have thoughts on Trey Palmer and or Sterling Shepard? At Shepard coming in 10% ownership, Trey Palmer 13%. What do you think? Yeah,
it's just one of those edges of the MME bros. There's upside for all these guys.
Yeah.
So if you could just mix and match, but me, I'm a single entry 3 max. So yeah, McMillan I think is the best play on paper, but certainly could see any of those guys 4xing value.
Diggs, Dell, playing against Indy feels pretty good. Diggs is 7,500. Dell is 6,300. Man, I played a lot of Dell last week and he just rubbed dirt in my face. I don't know. How do you feel about Diggs or Dell?
Yeah. I think, Tank Dell's a decent bet for the reason we liked him. What was it, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, where in games without Nico, he's historically seen this massive route share spike, first read target share spike. I still believe in the talent. I just think what's really killed this passing attack too is they're just getting destroyed by any pass rush, like even like bad pass rushes. But Indianapolis has a really bad one as well. What I will just say is, like, non-paper, to me, it looks like a Joe Mixon week. I don't know that Indianapolis can push them, but so he's not super high on my list, but I wrote him up. I thought about it.
Yeah, at least thinking about. EW asking about Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper. I think Amari Cooper, they're like, he's not fully up to speed with the offense, so it sounds like he's not going to be super involved. We already saw Devontae Adams first week there was full-time player for the Jets. So I'm assuming you're not in on Cooper, but you said you kind of think Favre was interesting, or not Favre. You think Aaron Rodgers is sort of interesting. You playing any Devontae Adams?
I mean, there's a case for Amari. The dude scored a touchdown on like an audible that he didn't even know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Keon Coleman was like
telling him where to go.
Yeah,
just insane.
And he was super productive. And when he was on the field, like, he had insane targets per route run. So maybe that spikes. I'm probably not going to play him, but I get that. Devontae Adams, my blurb on him in my slate breakdown, it was just like there was no data in there. It was just like, look at what Alan Lazard did and like how potent that BFF connection was. And so, like, Devontae Adams with Aaron Rodgers is like the greatest BFF connection of all time, where like the Lazard is just like a mild acquaintance in comparison. And so I could just see him going nuclear against a soft Patriots secondary. It was a tough matchup last week. And I could just see Rodgers trying to make this a statement game. So, like, this is all narrative based, but I could see that hitting ultimately. Not really high on my list, but I wrote it up. I could see it happening.
Jackoff says Adams has already scored tomorrow. We just didn't get the notification yet. Yeah, I mean, exactly. It kind of feels
that's
like Devontae
is
going to score tomorrow.
How many times though?
That's
2?
And he's 7,100. So just like one touchdown, not going to be enough. If he scores 2, then yeah, super interested in that. Yeah, I think he's in play at 7,100. Jaden Reed, people keep bringing him up, and I think he's an interesting one. We talked about Jordan Love. He's clearly the top target for Jordan Love. Been much better in games with Jordan Love, as you would expect, than Malik.
Well, he's not really the top target. He's just the most productive.
Oh, target. Sure. That's Dontavian Wicks. My guy Dontavian Wicks is the top target. No, how do you feel about? I mean, any Packers receivers then?
That's what I was saying was tricky about Jaden Reed. Jordan Love, where it's a great matchup for all of them. Like, amazing. Like, this secondary is trash. Probably better for Reed than anyone else in the slot. But Reed sort of strikes me as like one of the few guys where schematic matchups really matter a lot more. And it's not a good schematic matchup for him. Really much better for Christian Watson or Dontavian Wicks, but you really can't play them either just because that's a timeshare. Jake wrote a blurb on Romeo Doubs that I thought was pretty compelling. It compelled me enough to include it in the article. But yeah, I think your lean has to be Jaden Reed just based on the production we've seen from him. 20 DraftKings fantasy points per game over his last 9 games with Jordan Love. And like I said, you could not find a better on paper matchup, even though the volume's not there. This is just one of the most efficient players we've seen on a per target basis in a really long time. So that would be my lean, but there is uncertainty.
Speaking of Devontae Adams, not EOM says Gonzo gonna erase that chump, and I was just pulling up the
Gonzo doesn't look too hot by
cornerback matchup. Yeah, it looks like a positive matchup for Devontae Adams so far this year. Just not as good as he was last year. Do you think that's real? Is he just? And we've talked about this, how it's like fluky with cornerbacks year over year. Like, a guy can be awesome, just dominate one year, and then the next year they are not good, and kind of seems to be the case this year.
Yeah, I will say there's a little uncertainty just because I know DK Metcalf shredded him on like screens, which really isn't you can't really hold that too much against him. And there's another few weird things like that, but also Adams was always, I think this is right, was always like immune to shadows. Like there's some wide receivers where shadows just don't matter, and he was one of them.
Okay. We're going to get yelled at by some Patriots fans suggesting that Christian Gonzalez is not.
No, I get that every
that elite cornerback.
You get a lot of that.
Yeah. All right. Who else do we like here? You throw. Who are some of your favorite wide receivers that we have not talked about yet?
Oh boy, I think there's a lot. I don't know. I'm stalling. Let me pull up my article when you throw some names out.
Let's see. So I'm sorted by ownership here. AJ Brown, I think, is going to look pretty good. I like Jalen Hurts this week again. I think that's a game that could sneakily go off, even at 8,200, 5% ownership. I kind of like for AJ Brown. Yeah,
I think there's an argument you can make. Like he should be valued as the rest of season wide receiver 1. Like what he's doing is just so insane. Basically a 50% yardage market share in games active this year would rank like best ever. His finishes in his 3 healthy games, wide receiver 7, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 6. It's a top 6 matchup. And so, yeah, I could really just see him going nuclear. I was betting on Devonta Smith in this offense, this Kellen Moore offense, just because, there were a lot of talk about getting him more involved in the slot, and like Kellen Moore's slot wide receiver or wide receiver 1 just sees insane volume. But that's kind of AJ Brown now, I think. And you see Kellen Moore get creative with his usage, move him all around the line of scrimmage, and really just the ball going to him and to great success. So I think he's a really strong, I think he's a great GPP play. It's just, I've recommended a lot of expensive options, and I might like the running backs more, but he's for sure up there.
Let's see.
Darnell Mooney is a strong value.
Yep.
It's just
5,800.
5,800. I mean, he went nuclear in this spot 2-3 weeks ago. Since week 2, he ranks 15th in XFP per game, 16th in fantasy points per game. Not priced like it. DJ Moore, I think, is interesting. He would definitely be my lean over the other Chicago wide receivers, just with Washington increasing their rates of man. He's just absolutely destroyed man throughout his career, and by target share really does look like the wide receiver 1 there. And then I have a bunch of maybe Galbrains, maybe not that Galbrain, but a bunch of lower owned wide receivers I like, I think, more than a lot of the, 7 to 12% wide receivers. And so JSN, I think you got to talk about, maybe it's a trap. Maybe he just stinks. Like that's certainly possible. But the dude ranks 11th among all wide receivers in XFP, and DK Metcalf is now doubtful. It's also clearly his spot. And you've seen him be pretty schedule sensitive this year, at least as it relates to volume. And the Bills are a top slot funnel, 3rd most catches to slot wide receivers, 8th fewest to outside wide receivers, really funneling everything short, which is something they've done for 9 years in a row now at the highest rate. So he has a really low ADOT compared to everyone else. So I could just see the volume being there. He did well. The only other game that DK Metcalf missed had like a 30% target share in that game. Brian Thomas Jr., I think, deserves a really strong shout just because of how awesome he's been. It's really, by yards per route run, one of the best rookie seasons ever. By fantasy points per game, it's like, one of the 7 best ever. And like every guy on that list is like a guaranteed Hall of Famer. Nothing really stands out schematically or based on the matchup, but Green Bay is seeing a lot of deep targets, and that's really where he's excelled this year. But really, he just looks awesome. He's played really well. Demario Douglas is one I really like a lot, and someone keeps shouting him out in chat. I really like him. Jake and I fought a little bit on him. Jake questions the upside, but he excites me. He really does, because so you throw out last week's game. He was in and out of that game with an illness. He was like vomiting all day and all game. And you saw Hunter Henry step up into his role, that big slot role. But when Douglas has been on the field, Drake May has targeted him targeted him 41% of the time, which is insane. And like you've seen the interviews with Drake May where he just hypes up his guy, Demario Douglas. You've also seen like this New England regime, Belichick's no longer there, but it's a lot of the same guys, just that offense runs through the slot. Right. And May looks good, dude. May looks really good. It's a really good schematic. It's like a awesome schematic. The only thing is it's maybe a worst possible matchup, especially with, I think Michael Carter's back last I checked, especially with him back. It's not great. But I don't know. I kind of think this could be a game they're trailing the whole time. You could see some prevent defense or garbage time and have a nice little game. So I like me some Demario Douglas.
I like that's an interesting call out. Devon Vele against Carolina, 3,400. Any interest in Devon Vele or Troy Franklin actually?
Yeah, I wasn't on Vele. Just maybe you should pull up the data suite, but I was on him like the week before, but then he like barely played, and it seems like Troy Franklin has beat him out in usage, and so Franklin's a little interesting for me with that. Again, their implied point total is 26% higher than their season average by points scored per game. So like there's ever a week to play Denver, it would be this week. We know Franklin has that rapport, that connection with Bo Nix. We're awesome together in college. But yeah, none of them were high on my radar. With Vele, again, I think his playing time has come down and Franklin's has come up to the point where I would pivot to Franklin, but are we stuck loading right now?
We are stuck loading right now. Saturday, busy usage day, I think, for the data suite. All right, we are up. Let me move this.
All right, click on week.
Yeah. So we had last week, Troy Franklin, 63.6%, 6 targets. Devon Vele, 54.4%, 3 targets.
So to me, it's just Franklin leapfrogged him and a little bit more exciting, just given the big play potential and known rapport between the two.
Yeah, they have the shower narrative, right? Troy Franklin and
That's right.
Bo Nix.
That's right.
I kind of want to do actually before we move on, let's just hear any other names that you want to throw out there.
Again, I really like Tim Patrick.
Yeah,
I think he's a great play. I don't think McMillan's that much stronger of a like factor in ownership and upside. Maybe he's not. I think you could gamble on DeAndre Hopkins at 1%, just with the caveat being that it's 1%. Like what was Juju Smith-Schuster last week, right? It was like mega chalk 40% because of the allure of the Rashee Rice role. And I think DeAndre Hopkins would be awesome at that role. How many snaps does he play? That's the big question. Maybe just like 15 snaps. So that's why it's thin, but just 1%, 4,900 worth a shout out. I think Tyler Boyd is like not as good as Tim Patrick or a bunch of the other 3Ks, but he just deserves a shout. Just best possible on paper matchup. No DeAndre Hopkins. Team said they're going to stop force feeding Ridley the ball. Probably not going to play him, but just had to mention him because no one else is talking about him.
All right, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this because it's so I kind of hate answering these types of questions, but I want to put you on the spot because I think it's really important on this slate to get the value right. Like because we have so many value options, I kind of want to make you rank them somehow, and I think we have to do factor in ownership. Like I think it pretty clearly Jalen McMillan to me sounds like he would be your favorite if you don't factor in ownership. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's factor in ownership. Just the players that are under 4,000. So you've got Jalen McMillan, and I sorted here by fantasy points per dollar. It's not perfect, but you can kind of see most of the ones that we're considering are near the top. Jalen McMillan is up here. Cedric Tillman, Trey Palmer, Jake Bobo.
I really have no idea. This is
Never.
tricky, and I envy the MME bros. Jake Bobo would be at the bottom.
Okay.
Tyler Boyd right ahead. I probably wouldn't play either of those guys in all honesty. Well,
who do you think you will? So let's say you play 10 lineups.
Well, I'm going to have so much Jameis that Tillman I'll probably be highest exposed to.
Okay.
What is Bateman? Bateman's not in here, right?
Bateman's 4,300. Yeah, he's a little too
okay, so he's
expensive
not in
for
this
this game.
range. So I'll probably have the most, but that's really mostly due to the quarterback.
If you you play what 3 to 5 lineups? Is that where you think you're playing tomorrow?
I might just do one. I might
Okay.
just say YOLO and Jameis, depending on how much I like that lineup.
If you were going to play 10 lineups, how many of these sub 4K?
Oh, I would try and spread it out a little bit, I think.
So who would make your player pool, do you think?
Jalen for sure.
Tillman, clearly.
Yeah, but probably not on any non-Jameis lineups.
Okay, fair.
And then Tim Patrick, I would have maybe 2.
Okay.
And anyone else? No Bobo. Probably no Boyd.
Did you say Trey Palmer would make your pool?
No, probably not.
Okay.
I mean, if I was an MME bro and I had the opto.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, like, just trying to get kind of a sense, because it's,
I mean, the thing is like
right.
You build a perfect lineup and then you have he fits perfect. You never know who you might end up with.
All right, I think that's a good enough response. So it would be Jalen McMillan, Cedric Tillman in lineups that have Jameis Winston, and then Tim Patrick. Those are the kind of the 3 that you in 10 lineups you'd probably prioritize.
Yeah.
Okay. Love putting you on the spot. Just love watching you sweat. I'm
not good at it. Yeah. Luckily, I turned that AC back on, so I'm not sweating too much.
Shorty Vegas picks says Alec Pierce has to be mentioned on the show. Houston sucks versus the deep ball. And we've already seen it this year. Alec Pierce against Houston went all the way off. He's too expensive for me. I don't think I'm getting a $5,000 Alec Pierce.
That's your boy.
It is allegedly my boy. I don't know. Do you want to play him this week?
No, I don't know that I'm ever going to play Alec Pierce, but
yeah.
Good for him. I hope he keeps it up. He's had, I mean, if you look at him just off the numbers, what he has, like 2 25-point games, another 17-point game. I can't do it. And maybe if you play Anthony Richardson, that's a path.
Matt asked for best cash quarterback. That would just be Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix is a lock. Scott apparently threw out Jameis Winston as a potential cash quarterback.
No, I said that's my recommendation. Maybe I'm just an insane man.
Really? You prefer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have different answers. I kind of like lean into the ownership, and I just think Bo Nix is going to be much higher owned in cash. Like, I just don't want it to bury me if he does go off.
Yeah, I think Johnny's going to call me stupid tomorrow morning, but that's why we do that show.
Yeah. Any other wide receivers to talk about?
Probably not.
Okay. Move on. Talk about some tight ends, and it's interesting tight ends. Like, you got Kate Otten coming in at 30.
Not only that, it's National Tight End Day.
Ooh, I hadn't even factored in the National Tight End Day aspect of it. So Will Dissly, it sounds like Hayden Hurst is probably going to play, I think, from the latest I saw, in which case Will Dissly is not going to project nearly as well, and not going to, I mean, it looks like the projection has come down. The ownership is going to come down as well if Hayden Hurst plays, I would assume. Is that accurate? I think this is assuming Hayden Hurst is out.
Our projection?
The ownership projection.
Yeah. That's assuming he's out. I think our fantasy point per dollar is he's going to play.
Yeah. Okay. Kate Otten, 37% ownership, 3,500. We're missing Mike Evans. We're missing Chris Godwin. How do you feel about Kate Otten at 37%?
I mean, he's the cash tight end of the week. Really great play, really safe. But at 37%, you could for sure get away from him. There's a lot of good tight ends to play this week.
Yeah, I think that sums it up nicely. It's like, yeah, he's a great point per dollar play, but also to me, that's too high of ownership. Like, I'm definitely fading 37%.
Especially for a tight end.
Maybe try to cap it at like 20%, because that's too high. And he's always been running all the routes. Who knows if they actually are going to start targeting him significantly more. He's been a little bit more, like, had more usage this year than last year at least. So is that going for him? But 37% feels a little bit too much for me. David Njoku coming in at 12% projected ownership. He should. I mean, I think you already alluded to liking David Njoku, so I'll just open it up to you. How much do you like him? Oh, I didn't even see you. Okay.
I really like him. And I was all over him last week and even the week before that. He's led the team in first read target share in back-to-back weeks. Led all players at all positions in XFP last week. In just 11 full quarters of work, he's averaging 9.8 targets, 14 fantasy points per 4 quarters. On a target per route run basis, he would rank third among all players at all positions. I talked about what happened with Flacco last year. He would have ranked as the wide receiver 3 by fantasy points per game from week 14 on. And he just gets a huge upgrade now. Maybe Jameis, because he has like a fully mobile shoulder, works more on the wide receivers or something. But I don't know. I just absolutely love him. And I think Njoku is going to go down as like one of the best ball picks. Like all these, the top 6 early drafted tight ends are flopping, and Njoku missed a bunch of time due to injury, but I could see him just going back to being who he was at the tail end of last season, especially now with Jameis. So I really like him. Yeah.
Agreed with you on that for sure. The ownership not really too high. Brock Bowers, 36 targets over the past 3 weeks. Kansas City so far this year has been a tight end funnel. If you just look at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, do you want to play some Brock Bowers this week?
Yeah, of course. Insane volume he's seeing. His XFP per game would rank, without Devontae Adams, would rank as the best of any tight end in fantasy points data history. Massive floor, tons of design targets. He's basically like, in competition with Puka Nacua for the most catches by a rookie ever. I think the holes you could poke in him: touchdown upside. Jacoby Myers is back. The matchup is amazing. It's a best possible tight end funnel by schedule adjusted. Schematically, it's a best possible spot. The only wrench there is like Steve Spagnuolo is really good. Like, yeah. I don't know that he doesn't just intentionally scheme Brock Bowers out of the picture with brackets or whatever. And like, don't sleep on Jacoby Myers either. Like his last game, he was playing hurt with an ankle injury, picked up a Patrick Surtain shadow on 50% of his routes and still really productive. Volume was awesome. The week before that, he led all players at all positions in target share. So I can see him kind of eating into Bowers' work a little bit. Yeah, I think I like Njoku's upside more, but maybe that's just overthinking it, because on paper, this is just like such a nuclear spot.
Well, it's also, we're sorted now by schedule adjusted for the entire season, but if you just look at the last 5 games, it's more of a middling matchup. And I like my understanding of the situation is that we had Isaiah likely went completely off week 1, and it was probably because Steve Spagnuolo just wanted them to force it to Isaiah likely, whereas they're not going to want to force it to Brock Bowers. So I don't think you're overthinking. I think I have the exact same concerns about Brock Bowers of just maybe they just double him the entire game. Like maybe their entire focus is on stopping him. In which case, it's a good call out. Jacoby Myers maybe becomes more interesting. I don't know. I think it's it's
a worse possible spot for Jacoby on paper. That's partly why they look like a tight end funnel, and they kind of are, is just they're so good against wide receivers, but you could argue they're just good everywhere.
Yeah. So this is the past 5, just a totally middling matchup. But on the season again it's the best possible. All right. Who else? Trey McBride against Miami, 5% projected ownership. Travis Kelce, 8% projected ownership. Evan Ingram, 12% projected ownership. What do you think about these other kind of higher priced tight ends?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I struggle with Evan Ingram a little bit, because if you look at our new tool, the route share tool, so he closed out last season hitting a 75% route share in 14 of 15 games, but he's been under 70% every game this year. So he's not on the field as much as he was last year. Flip side of that is he's led the team in target share, or tied it every single game this season he's played. He had 10 catches for 102 yards 2 weeks ago. This is a great matchup by the schedule adjusted stuff we were just looking at. It's another tight end funnel spot. But I don't know. I definitely have him a tier behind Bowers and Njoku. And then Kelce, McBride aren't super high on my radar.
Okay. Interesting. Kelce is going to get better usage without Rashee Rice, I would think.
Why not play Noah Gray, who cucked him last week?
Yeah, true. What about Dalton Schultz. So we talked about Tank Dell as like he has better usage without Nico. Same thing for Dalton Schultz. Like the usage is just better without Nico. He's only 4,100. Doesn't project extremely well, but sort of interesting. And the rest in this range. So you've got Dalton Schultz, Tucker Kraft is 4,600, Kyle Pitts 4,400. Do you have anybody from that kind of price range that you like?
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about Kyle Pitts after writing him off as dead a few weeks back. He's hit 65 receiving yards in 3 straight. Had a season high target share 2 weeks ago, then a team high target share 25% last week. That came in a game Seattle was down both starting perimeter cornerbacks. So like that should have been a London Mooney game, but it wasn't. You saw Pitts really heavily involved. It's a great schematic matchup for him. Route shares really picked up in recent weeks. So he's for sure in play. Dalton Schultz too. Since the team lost Nico Collins, you've seen his target per route run double. It's a top 3 matchup on paper. It's also an amazing schematic matchup for him. Colts run a lot of zone. His fantasy points per route run average like almost doubles against zone. So I like both of those guys. Not super high on my list, but they're strong.
We just got a question about Jonnu Smith, and he was brought up on another show I was on. So I was just looking up 65.6% route participation, 7 targets last week. Now gets Tua back. Any interest in Jonnu?
Hey, my Galaxy brain play from
That's
last
right.
week.
You had it last week.
That was John Proctor's highest owned tight end last week. He had way more conviction than me. But yeah, he went off. I don't know. I kind of think, Tua back, it should be the wide receivers, right? And, it was the backup Tyler Huntley who targeted tight ends at the highest rate of any quarterback ever. And so maybe he was just a product of that. So he's not high on my radar, but you never know, just because, he did really well last week. Maybe that continues. But I think there are better tight end plays.
Trade is posted. No Huntley, no Jonnu.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good role.
Good role. Anybody else? I don't think that I have any other Sam Laporta with no JMO. No. Yeah.
Is Tommy Tremble out?
Good question. I don't think so. I thought Tommy Tremble was. I'll just Google it.
I mean, Bryce Young isn't great, but no Deontay.
Yeah.
If we also get no Tommy Tremble,
it's still
Jatavian is interesting. That passing attack did nothing last week except Jatavian was nice, dude. He had like 70% of the team's passing yards, caught 6 of 6 targets for 61 yards. He's just like cheap, and we like cheap tight ends. Someone brought up Hunter Henry in chat. Again, my lean is DeMario Douglas, but Henry deserves a shout out, dude. He's 3,800. Since the start of last season, he's hit 16.5 DraftKings fantasy points 6 times. Only George Kittle has more over that span. So I've always put respect on that name. I've always said Hunter Henry is underrated in DFS. He still is. But again, personally, my lean is DeMario Douglas. And then we have a few more gal brains similar to Jonnu from last week we can talk about, but no one who I would say is an amazing play.
All right. Gal brains similar to Jonnu from last week. I don't even think I want to guess. I think I just want you to tell me.
Yeah. Lucas Krull, route share jumped up to 62% over the last 2 weeks, up from like 15%, ranked second on the team in targets over that span. Top 5 matchup on paper. With like a 2,700 guy, you're kind of just praying for a touchdown. And like I said, the odds are pretty good. 26 point implied point total, 4th highest of the week. 26% more than what the average. So pretty good odds of scoring a touchdown, I think. Noah Fant is up there as well without DK Metcalf. He's hit 60 receiving yards in back-to-back games. JSN has never done that once in his career. Leads the team in catches over that span. Ranks a distant 4th in targets. His route share was like 50% last week. So that's why he's thin. But I could just see him getting more involved without DK Metcalf. I think in part because he's earned it. He's looked good.
Yeah, I like that. Zach Ertz.
It's a good schematic matchup. I just don't think he has any upside personally.
maybe if you're playing Mariota, maybe you consider Hurts as kind of a cheaper set.
Well, that's what you do with tight ends. We walk this slate position by position, but really in GPPs, it's just stack your quarterback with the tight end, right?
Yeah, I think that is generally good rule. Yeah, what else was I gonna? Maybe you don't have anything. Yeah, I think that you've named all of the tight ends that I have any. I didn't really have any great Galaxy brand. Somebody brought up Dalton Kincaid is min priced on FanDuel. It like clearly a pricing error. He's $4,000 on FanDuel. That's one of those that's like I almost feel like they could have done it on purpose because he's the type that's like he's min priced, like clearly underpriced, but also could fail. So it's an interesting spot though. They said they might fade it. I would be fine fading min priced Dalton Kincaid on FanDuel. But he's obviously a strong value there.
I think we still have Njoku higher by value.
I think so too. Yeah. No, I think that
you fat finger it and make him min price, and he's still not beating out Njoku. How the mighty have fallen. Remember the elite tight end narrative that took over Twitter?
Yeah. David Njoku just barely higher than Dalton Kincaid on FanDuel. That is pretty nuts.
You could also play Kittle on FanDuel, but this isn't a FanDuel show. But Debo, fluid in his lungs, no Juwan Jennings, no Brandon Ayuk. Seems like an awesome spot for him for tournaments.
Going to any Grant Calcaterra? I think I say that wrong. What's
Calcaterra? I don't know. Not super high on my list, but it could happen.
Yeah. 70% route participation.
5 air yards, 1 target. Yeah.
Yeah, not great.
But they were down an offensive lineman, so he might have been blocking more. I haven't checked the injury report to know whether or not that O-lineman's back or not, but it still was a little too thin for me to dig much deeper into it.
Probably fits the general rule of like if you're playing Jalen Hurts, because Jalen Hurts is so expensive, like he'd be a good double stack with Calcaterra. Sort of interesting. We already talked about McBride a little bit earlier, so you can rewind that one. EW.
I mean, he's fine, but we haven't seen a ceiling from him in a really long time.
Yeah, unfortunately, he is the elite tight end that I was most in on, and just not.
Yeah, I liked him too. I also like Mark Andrews, and I still can't explain what went wrong there.
I don't know. He scored 2 touchdowns their last game, so maybe he rebounds, but I don't think the usage has still been there. I think it's still been pretty piss poor anyway. So let's see. 44% route participation, scored 2 touchdowns on 4 targets last week. I don't know. That's brutal. I think we're through. Do you have any other tight ends?
No.
Yeah, Will Dissly, I think you just play if Hayden Hurst is out, Will Dissly will look good.
I think Jake likes mixing in Andrews or some of the tight ends for Lamar. I don't know that I can see that. It makes sense for like you build a lineup that way, but it's so hard for me to click on it. Andrews with his 40% route share.
Likely higher route share, over 50%, at least the past 3 weeks.
Yeah, it hasn't done anything since week 1 though.
Yeah, right? Week 1, 12 targets, and then just like ever since then, 3 or 4. Yeah, it's tough. All right.
But hey, no Zay Flowers this week. There's some redundancy to their roles. So that's something I hadn't thought about until just now.
Oh, did we not bring up Komet? I thought we talked about him. Maybe we didn't.
Komet's up there. I mean, probably give me 10 lineups. I don't know that I have him outside of stacks, but just that week 3 game, massive ceiling, and he's done well, has touchdown upside.
Yeah, I think seems in play. All right, let's play around with building a few lineups. So we both really like Jameis. Should we start there, or should we do that for our last one? Do you have another quarterback you want to start with?
Who are we playing?
Jameis. I mean, I think we both really like Jameis. Yeah, we could just do it. Okay. And then I know you like Derrick Henry as your favorite play on the slate, so might as well throw him into this lineup as the bring back. I assume it is Njoku at the very least.
Yeah.
And then double stack with Tillman or Jerry Jeudy.
Or both.
Triple stack.
I don't know. I think that's in play, but you make the call, and you could also play Bateman here. Like I just think there's a chance that this game just goes crazy. Like it's a bet on, like we know Ravens have the most potent offense in football right now, and what if Jameis really is the force multiplier we think he can be, or at least what Flacco was last year, in which case it just goes crazy.
Yeah, I could see it. I think let's start with a triple. We can take somebody out later if we don't like the way things are looking. All right, who else do we like at running back?
Barkley, Walker, Mixon.
You just like the expensive guys, making it easy on me. Okay.
Well, I mean, we have like $1 million in salary remaining.
We do have money left. Yeah. All right, let's go. Let's see if we can get Barkley in there. We'll take him out if we need to. We still have over 5,000, and we haven't played even Jalen McMillan.
Yeah, we're not going to play it.
Okay.
Pick a cheap defense, and scroll down. There we go. Couldn't see the rest of the line.
I kind of think so. I think I'm on an island here, but I think Tennessee is actually kind of a sneaky defense this week. They project so horribly. Nobody's going to play them, but I'm like, they're a really good defense. I don't know. Jared Goff can certainly turn the ball over. So I think they're sort of interesting. But fantasy point per dollar, Falcons look pretty good. Could go to Washington, I guess, facing the rookie quarterback. I don't know. Who do you like for cheap defenses?
Yeah. I don't know.
Falcons. I'll just throw the Falcons in there for now.
Yeah.
All right. 6,300 left per player. So we don't need to go to Jalen McMillan. Sounds like you don't want to play him. We could. AJ
I mean,
Brown.
I would play Bateman over him for the stack.
Sure. Full game stack. Drake London is here. I mean, we're pretty contrarian as it is right now, so we could just play some chalkier with somebody like Drake London.
HN
in the flex. Oh yeah, we don't even have Tyreek Hill in this lineup yet.
Oh yeah, throw Tyreek in there.
Yeah. And that leaves us 5,600. So we could put HN in there if we make a couple adjustments. Like we take Judy out if we wanted to.
No. Switch Barkley to a different.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Mixon.
Bam. Now we have HN.
Look at that. Magic. Or Swift. So if you don't want to dupe us in the millie, that's what someone at home could do. And then if Swift outscores HN and we get everything else right,
yeah,
you'll win $1 million and we'll win a couple $100K.
$10. Yeah. Jameis Winston tripled with Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, and David Njoku. We have Derrick Henry on the bring back. Joe Mixon, our other running back there. We have Tyreek Hill and Devin Achane just eating up that Miami value. And then we have the Falcons defense leaving zero salary on the table. This looks like a strong GPP lineup to me.
I think it's the Millie winner, honestly.
It very well could be.
At least if DK scoring was by plus EV and not DK fantasy.
It is the highest. Don't run it through the Sims. Just trust our brain Sims when we tell you this is the best possible lineup. All right. Let's do another one. So you said you're just going to do all Jameis Winston, go all in on Jameis Winston this week, but we should diversify for the sake of this show. I feel like we should mix it up a little bit, go some different directions. What about a Jordan Love stack?
Okay.
I would probably just play Jaden Reed, maybe Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, let's just play Reed for now.
Okay.
Do you want to have a BTJ bring back?
Yeah, let's do that. We could still, I mean, now this is a type of lineup. So we have pretty low owned stack. So we could probably eat some of that value wide receiver chalk if we wanted to and play expensive running backs. Or we could,
let's get Henry in there.
Okay.
Let's get
Javonte. Or you didn't? I forget. Did you like the Javonte chalk?
Yeah, we didn't really talk about it, but it's just like this is what I've been saying about the player for a long time. Is he's just insanely game script sensitive, and so like in losses he averages like 8 fantasy points per game, and wins it's like 13, and then in wins of over a touchdown it's like 19, and it's just a best possible matchup. Amazing game script. You could stack him with the defense. So yeah, I think he's rightfully chalk.
Let's do that. Let's stack him with the defense.
Okay.
So we're paying up at defense here. So now we have 4,000 left per player. Luckily, we have a tight end spot and we have plenty of value at wide receiver.
You want to go cheap on tight ends?
Yeah, we can do that
with a Kroll or a.
Ooh, that's kind of fun. Well, we got then triple the Broncos there. If we do that,
yeah.
I think that's fine. They're cheap enough.
Yeah, just assume multiple turnovers, good starting field position, lots of end zone opportunities.
So now we could go like a Lad McConkey here.
No.
Or we could not do that and go to let's see.
Could we get Tyreek in here? Is that at all possible?
No.
Probably not. Okay.
Not as constructed. Unless we can find a $2,300 wide receiver, which I don't think exists.
Oh, no.
We're actually not that far. If we take the Broncos out and go to one of these like minimum E price Jake Bobo, is he the cheapest one that we liked? I think he might be.
No, I didn't like Bobo.
Right.
What about Mooney? See what that does.
Yeah, Mooney we could fit
alongside like a McMillan or Tim Patrick.
Palmer, at least I believe, is 3,500. Yeah, Trey Palmer, Simi Fehoko, we didn't really talk about. Tim Patrick also. So who do you prefer between
I would
Tim
go Patrick?
All right. So there you go. We're zeroed out. We have Jordan Love with Jaden Reed, single stack. We have Brian Thomas on the bringback, Derrick Henry, Javonte Williams, Lucas Kroll, and the Broncos defense all together. We've got Darnell Mooney, Tim Patrick. I think that's all of it. Yeah. So there you have it. There's the final lineup. We zeroed it out. Looks good. No issue with this one. It's not the Millie winner because we already made that with our first one, but still a pretty strong lineup.
We did it.
We did it.
We have the first and second lineups in the Millie this week.
That's definitely realistic. I mean, they're very different, but still somehow they're going to be first and second. We've been doing three, and we've been doing like you do one and then I do one, and then we build one together, and we just totally did it differently this way. But do you just want to lead one?
Ooh, we could do a double. I think
that's fun.
I think if we're talking about plus EV, I think you make 3 lineups. I think those would be the 3, or we can just go Galaxy Brain. I've been talking about this in Discord every single week for 2 years. I don't know that anyone believes me, but every single week, my highest scoring lineup is whatever I throw into the cheapest tournament, like the Daily Dollar. And like weeks where like I crush and I win a lot of money, it's still like the Daily Dollar was my highest score. Yeah. And it's always like my most off the wall quarterback or something I just throw together at the last second. And so I feel like we should start doing that on this show. So I'll let you pick. I'll say Tua, by the way, Tua doubles, triples is the plus EV route. But just to make it weird, let's get weird. It's a Millie. Rodgers, Cousins, Baker, Richardson, Mariota. I'm going to narrow it. It's going to be Rodgers, Cousins, or Baker. You got to pick one of those.
Rodgers, Cousins, or Baker. Let's go Cousins.
Okay.
Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Triple with Mooney. Bijan, what do you like?
I don't know, man, because there's so many different ways you can go about this. Again, it's not the schematic for London, but he's been so rock steady. Mooney was the one who went off last time. He's a good value. And then on the opposite side, you have all these Tampa Bay wide receivers to pick from who could be value. You have Cade Otton. So do we want to play Pitts when we play Cade Otton, or do we want to double that? I will just say this is probably easier on MME Bros. Why don't we just go with Rodgers?
Oh God, I hate it. That's why. Because I hate it. I don't want to play Aaron Rodgers.
That's why it's going to work. All right. The question is, do you want to double him?
Or do you want to I want to double him. No, I want to double him. So we'll go Devontae Adams. And Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall?
That's the question.
Let's go Breece Hall.
Okay. And this, by the way, this offense to me looks like one of the most highly concentrated, where it really just runs through those three guys. And I do think Adams above Wilson, especially this week. But yeah, I like this. Do we want to bring it back with double D, Demario Douglas?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay, all right.
All right, so we have 5,000 left per player.
Do we have a mix-in lineup yet?
We don't.
We do.
No, we do. Yeah, we do.
Okay,
so
good. Just because every week thus far, our best lineup has been a mix-in lineup. So I just wanted to make sure we had some exposure to him. I want
Kenneth Walker lineup yet.
I would like to do. I feel like I need Derrick Henry, or Zay or Bateman or something, and with maybe a piece of Jameis attached to that.
Okay. We might be able to do Derrick Henry if we do Tillman.
Henry and Njoku, could we do that?
Oh yeah, we do maybe. The prices, I mean, yeah, we can do it.
Go down to the cheapest defense. We probably can't do it, but
let's do Titans. Yeah, Titans cheapest defense. All right, so we have 4,900 left per player. We could do, if we did double defense, we could do Tyreek Hill in here with a $2,800, or sorry, double tight end with a $2,800 tight end, or we could go Achan with a $3,600. No, yeah, $3,600 wide receiver. That could work.
Okay.
Do you want to do Tim Patrick again, or Trey Palmer? Anything else?
Let's just see it with Tim Patrick. We could do double. No. We're doing double tight ends on National Tight End Week. Get Patrick out of there. Put in Pitts or Schultz or Bowers or Otten or.
Okay.
We need one double tight end on Tight End Week, or Conklin, or Henry, but probably not. We have our stacks.
All right, I mean, if we go cheap enough, then we could do, if we go 2,800 or lower, we could get Tyreek Hill in the lineup.
All right, play Kroll then. Likely someone brought up.
A little
I
bit
don't
too
even know what his
expensive.
price is, to be honest. That was sort of a recent revelation. I like it. Is there 300 tight end defense?
Say it again.
Is there a 2,300 defense?
Not better than the Titans.
Oh, okay. All right, nice.
If you wanted to, we could go to the Jaguars. I believe actually project better.
That's okay.
Okay. The Titans are my Galaxy Brain defense of the week because they're min-priced and they're gonna have a pick six.
I would love that. I play the min-price defense constantly and never get the pick six.
All right. Well, that was fun. We have 3 winning lineups here. All of them going to be top 3 in the millie, of course. Good show, Scott. Anything else coming up for you? Anything else to say about this slate? And where can people find you this weekend?
Scott Barrett DFB on Twitter. Be in our Discord to watch my morning show with Johnny tomorrow. And what about you? No London game for you this week.
Thank God, no London game because I'm, like I said, I'm hosting a Halloween party that starts in less than an hour.
Europe doesn't deserve football. This is our thing. This is what makes America great. And
wow,
they don't deserve it.
Hopefully, we don't have any international audience here for the show because they're gonna be pissed off. They already lost DFS. I mean, come on, Scott. They lost DFS. Now you're gonna take.
Well, they're getting the Jags. Jags are gonna be a London team in like 2 years. So
true. They're gonna have their own football team. That'll be fun. Now I have 45 minutes now to switch into my other flannel for my costume. And I'll be tomorrow I'll be doing and I have no idea how I'm going to fit this in, but I have to do at some point going to do the write-up of the Sunday night football game for Fantasy Points. So that will be published on Fantasy Points. Then of course I'll do my video breakdown when inactives come out tomorrow night for the Sunday night football game. Those are the places that you'll be able to find me talking about Fantasy Points for the rest of the weekend. I think that does it though. And you'll be on with Johnny tomorrow morning behind the paywall.
That's right.
Oh yeah. So check that out. All right. And if you haven't already done so, please do like the video, subscribe to the Fantasy Points YouTube, commenting. All of that is very helpful. And of course, Scott and I will be back next Saturday to talk about week 9. Thank you all for hanging out with us, and we will catch you next week.
What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.